Welcome to another episode of our Unleashed podcast. Today I'm here with Marte Eirin Solhaug, world champion in Pulka and combined. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're listening to Unleashed by Nonstop Dogwear.
And today we will actually talk about Pulka. I think many of our listeners actually might not know what that is. So could you please tell me a bit more about Nordic style and Pulka? What is it?
Yes. Nordic style is basically cross-country skiing with either one or two dogs. And you can go either with just a bungee leash, which is skijoring, and you can go Pulka. And then you have the Pulka with 70% of the dog's weight and a shaft.
Mm. So then the dog is attached to the shaft. You have this like Pulka between you two, and you're attached to the Pulka with a bungee leash.
Yes, so you're attached a bit way more behind than in the skijoring.
How did it start, like this whole Pulka? I think it might be very new to a lot of people, and I even am a bit unsure, like, what is the history behind it?
The history is for just delivering. In the older days, they used dogs and Pulkas to deliver a lot of sort of things, yes.
Because now I see here in Norway and in Scandinavia it's still pretty common outside of competition to actually use the dogs to like carry equipment out into the wilderness. You can probably bring a lot more weight than if you just like put in your backpack while skiing.
Yes.
But in competition, you use race Pulkas, so you cannot really pack things into them. But you mentioned that you use 30% of the dog's weight.
70.
70, yes,
Yes.
sorry. That is quite some weight.
Yes.
How do dogs react to pulling like such a heavy weight?
It's a bit more heavy than normal. They have to get used to have a bit more heavy weight. And also, it's also more important to be a good skier behind because you have to help them more.
In most sports, sled dog sports, the dog is attached with a bungee. Why is it that in the Pulka they are using this shaft, I'm not even sure how to say it. We will definitely like show some pictures for those who can see it, but it's like not metal, but it's at least static. It cannot like expand or go back like the bungee. It's a static thing that it goes around the dog pretty much.
It's stiff, so it's more safe as well because the Pulka can't go forward to the dog because it's attached to this shaft.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the distance between the dog and the Pulka is like always the same. It cannot crash into the dog in the worst case.
They cannot crash into it, and it's also more stable for the dog to run with this shaft because they are attached to the harness on the sides, so it feels more stable.
You like Pulka maybe even more than skijoring. Why do you like Pulka? What do you feel is the difference compared to skijoring?
It's just amazing to feel this cooperation with the dog. Everything is like when you are racing Pulka, it's like floating really well, and you have to have this really special bond to the dog because you're not able to just steer the dog in the right directions. And also like the skiing part, you have to go. I think you have to be even better on the skis when you go with Pulka.
I can really like see that point because when I ski with my dogs alone, I am not a good skier. They are strong dogs, so I'm pretty much just like hanging there, probably breaking for my life. But in Pulka, in my case, since I'm like not the best, the speed is a little bit lower. And I have to like work more. Like the dog is, obviously it's also like helps you a bit, but it's pulling more the Pulka than the human.
Yes, it's challenging for the dog if you're not a good skier. But also the speed is not too low. I think that's a little bit of a myth that it's very low speed. Obviously a bit lower. But the speed should be quite high, and you need actually a bit fast dogs in the Pulka races as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything you have to pay more attention to when you're like doing the Pulka compared to other categories?
Yes, you have to really look forward in the slopes because you have to be aware of the turnings and be prepared. If it's a very steep turn, for example, you need to help in to steer the pulka so it doesn't turn over. That can be really scary for the dog if it turns over. And also if you go the wrong turn, it takes so long time to turn around, and so you really need to be ahead of your dog, because the left and right you can't always trust at 100%. Some dogs maybe, but you should also help in with the steering. Maybe sometimes go in front as well to help the dog if you're not completely sure. For example, when we have these rounds, then it's sometimes more safe to just go up to the shaft to steer them in the right direction than risking a wrong turn, because that takes a long time.
Also, I see, even though the pulka cannot crash into the dog, when people are competing with pulka or like going fast with pulka, I see them braking a lot, especially on the downhills. Why is that?
It's to make sure the dog doesn't get scared, because it's a new sound, and they can feel that they have something behind them, and also the shaft is going a bit over the head as well. So to make sure that the pulka will never go faster than the dog, because then it will kind of push the dog forward, and that's not a good feeling for the dog.
So that's very important for them to feel safe and comfortable.
Yes.
But it's also a different way of attaching. Usually you attach to the harness via the back loop that is like at the end of the harness. The pulka attachment is usually like more higher up on the body. It's like over the shoulders-ish, kinda.
Yeah, it's kind of on the side. So it's attached on the side of the harness to make sure it's like a bit more stable as well.
How did dogs react to that? It must feel a bit different. Do you feel like that they can tell the difference, and do they like act differently?
If you have built a really confident dog in pulling in the beginning, most dogs will not react too much on it, because they just want to go. They just want to go forward. And if you bring their training buddies as well, and make sure that it's the same routines. Don't make too much fuss over it. Just like attach them and make sure. Don't just send them. Just you can stay with them for some seconds just to see if they feel safe. And if you see, it's okay, then you can slowly slide backwards and make sure to have a tight leash. Break a lot and help them so they don't get like a shock when you turn over.
So you would introduce them then to the pulka together with like some others that they can look at, but you would stay beside them at least in the beginning to make sure that they feel comfortable. And
that's how I do it. Mostly when I do it, I start the session with, and also it's very important to make sure the conditions are good enough, not too icy and not too hard, because if it's, for example, 10 centimeters of new snow, it will be very hard to take the pulka. So it should be fast enough, but not icy. And also start the session with the pulka, because then they're really eager to go, and bring a friend with another dog. They can go skijoring in front, for example.
When you're training, do you also use this 70% weight in the pulka, or do you train with lighter weights?
I train mostly with a bit lighter, but sometimes I take the competition weight as well.
When you start, then do you put weight in the pulka, or can you just start without any weight in the pulka just to get used to the equipment?
You should have a bit of weight, because if it's too light, it's more bouncy and harder to steer. So it should be a bit of weight in.
Why do you think people that are obviously can already Nordic ski a bit or do skijoring, why should they start pulka? Or like, why should they try it out?
I think it's a really fun part. It's very challenging. But when you first get this feeling with the cooperation and just flowing behind the dogs, it's just such a nice feeling. And for the dog as well, need a lot of training. So and also train different things. Yes, I just think it's fun for both you and the dog. Yeah.
I also see in Pulka a lot of long distances. Are the dogs going like gallop the full way, or can they trot when it's like, because there are competitions that are 30 kilometers or even longer?
Yeah, there are a few competitions that is 20 for females, and for the men's it's 30.
Yeah.
But that's just one competition. Mostly it's 10 to 15 for women's.
Yes.
And in those races are going quite fast. Like the speed is quite high. In the longer races, you can, for example, take a break during the race and give them maybe some fuel. Yeah, actually, yes.
I heard like so many positive things about like Pulka, like it can be a more positive experience for the dogs. You have like a different cooperation and like a different way of working together with the dog, because it's like it's a little bit heavier. You're not directly attached to them, like you have to work a bit more. I have some dogs, they are not so fond of speed anymore. They are a bit older, but they like pulling. Do you think that Pulka can be also something for people to just like go a bit like longer trip? The dog is then carrying stuff in the Pulka. Maybe they are not galloping the whole way. Do you think that is also like something that can be a cool experience for the dogs?
Absolutely. Like going, but to make sure the dog is not, if you have a dog that doesn't go too hard, then you can bring them for longer sessions and just maybe trotting around and make sure of the same things we have been talking about, that the Pulka doesn't,
doesn't like push the dog.
Yeah, push the dog
like,
forward in the downhills, and just make sure to keep the speed down and stop and have a break. And yes, I think that is also something you can do with the Pulka.
Can one do it if they are not so good in skiing? Because you said like you have to help the dog quite much. What do you think? Can one try it even if they are not the best in skiing yet?
Yes, absolutely. And if you want to try it and are not the best in skiing, it will be nice to have a bit flat trails, so you don't have these steep hills, because that can be a bit unmotivating for the dog if they're just going to the hill and then everything stops. So make sure that it's light enough trails and that you can follow your dog and make a good experience out of it.
When you mentioned that you can actually go up and like ski beside the dog and like you have quite good control with the dog, and they are obviously still pulling something, so they don't get suddenly this like that they can like run very fast as it would be, I don't know, like for example in canicross. Can that actually help dogs to learn a bit more pulling and like get more comfortable with pulling? Because I feel like sometimes with dogs that might not pull so much from before, you might try that they can pull like chains or are tired, just to get used to the feeling of pulling, and you go next to them or in front of them so you can encourage them. I feel you can do the same with Pulka, so maybe it can help dogs build this confidence with pulling.
Yes, you can. If your dog is quite uncertain about the Pulka, you can attach them and walk beside them, for example, just to be there with them and make sure to don't let them go forward before they are completely feeling safe.
It is connected to Pulka, but I hope this is also interesting to the audience. I thought I would ask you a bit about combined. I mentioned that you're world champion in combined. Can you tell our listeners what that is?
Yes, combine is mass start. So you're starting with the Pulka in a mass start, which can be a bit challenging. It's a lot of things to keep in mind. And then mostly after 7.5 kilometers, there's a pit stop, which you have to take off the Pulka and continue with skijoring. So it's a lot of things to think about, and it's challenging with the Pulka and the mass start at the same time.
Yes, it does sound like a very fun competition, especially with the mass start. And, it's very cool.
It's a lot of action, yes. And then after taking off the Pulka, it's 7.5 again with the skijoring.
Yeah. And first one to the finish then
Yes, first one
wins.
to the finish.
How is it to like take off the Pulka at the pit stop? That must be a bit challenging, or like how does it work?
I usually do it in speed.
Okay.
So when I get closer to the pit stop, I try to attach the dog. And when I get there, then I have the leash in the pit stop and just take it from there and attach it while I go.
Because, yeah, in Pulka, like we touched on it, but like there is actually nothing attached to the dog's back loop where you normally attach the harness in pulling sports or like the leash to the harness in other categories in pulling sports. When the dog is like pulling the Pulka and is in the dog, how much can they help you as the skier? Because you're only attached to the Pulka, not to the dog themselves. How much do you feel the power of the dog?
Oh, you feel it. Yes, a lot. You get a lot of help as well in the Pulka. But it's just even more important to help in because it's obviously heavier. Also, one point that I think it's really important is that all dogs in different sizes get quite of equal. Yeah. Because if you're a really small dog, you have a lighter Pulka. So it equals a bit more about the size of the dog.
Are there like other breeds that can also try Pulka, or is it more like for sled, like pulling dogs bred for sled dog sports?
I think all dogs a bit bigger, of course. If they are too small, the shaft will be too big. Yeah. But all dogs can try it, and as you mentioned as well, go for just bring equipment for a longer trip and just take it slow as well. Maybe attach them to children as well. It's possible. Yeah.
And like here, even they're pulling like children in the Pulka, so that is quite fun. But I can see with like small dogs, probably the Pulka equipment itself is already too heavy.
Yeah,
for,
it is
for a smaller dog.
You can't bring more in the Pulka, or even the Pulka is like a bit heavy as well.
What do your dogs think? Do they like Pulka more or skijoring more? Like, do you think if they could choose, what would they choose?
Actually, I don't think they mind. They just love to pull so much that they are not even thinking about it. So I think they love both equal. Yes.
It's a very cool category, I feel. Very challenging, but I hope that like more people get to learn about it and maybe they get in the mood to try it.
Yes, take it as a challenge and see what it will bring.
If someone got now interested to like try Pulka, when can they start to like train their dog with it? Since it's like a bit bigger weight, maybe they have to wait longer, or can they just go when they start with the normal pulling sports?
You should wait a little bit and make sure that they are 100% safe in the normal category. Like they are really eager to pull, and if they have that, then you can introduce it and make sure that they're just ready for it and fit enough for it.
Is there anything to keep in mind in the first sessions apart from what you mentioned before?
I think just make sure to that you will not have some obstacles. Yes. Like maybe go early in the morning or late in the night so we don't meet people, because in the beginning you shouldn't be taking too much. Yeah, you shouldn't mind too much if the dog is running, for example, in the left side or something like that, and then you can meet someone in the turn. Yeah, it's not so nice to meet you in the turn with the Pulka. So make sure that there's quite empty in the trails and nothing bad can happen.
So that it's a positive experience.
Yes, so you can have a positive experience.
I hope at least some of the listeners got eager to try it. If you could tell them one tip, what would it be?
One tip with the Pulka.
Yes.
I think it's make sure to have the same routines as you do in the skijoring, and make sure, like what we were talking about, that it will be a very nice experience. Just take everything in consideration and be one step in front of the dog.
Super. thank you so much for your tips and for telling us more about Pulka. It's, as I mentioned, probably new to many of our listeners.
Yes.
So I think they learned some very interesting new information today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.